Mitch Lafon here from One on One with Mitch Lafon, along with
Mark Striegel from Talking Metal.
And we're here to offer you a chance to win one of 5 Lite Roast albums by Sammy Hagar. New album including Dreams from 5150, Eagles Fly, The Love, all done acoustically with his longtime guitarist Vic Johnson. To find out how to win, check out our Facebook page, or my Facebook page, at facebook.com/one-on-one Mitch Lafon. And Mark?
Yes?
How do they win on Talking Metal?
You can head on over to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/talkingmetaldigital. We will have info up there.
Yeah, and to win, you're going to have all the instructions. It's going to be through Twitter. You're going to have to Twitter us. And, of course, we'll have that posted for you at my Facebook page and the Talking Metal Facebook page. Keep listening and enjoy the show.
This is one.
Welcome back to another episode of One on One with Mitch Lafon. I am your host, Mitch Lafon, joined by Cassius Morris. Now, it used to be of Creatures of the Net, but you've got an exciting announcement. You've changed things.
Yes. First of all, thanks for having me. I decided to merge my 2 podcasts, That Reporter Kid Speaks and Creatures of the Net, which is exclusively about Kiss, to make the Cassius Morris Show. So it's a show with all different, music and interviews and pretty much any content you can think of. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, and that's an exciting thing. Now, speaking of podcasts, today we've got Eddie Trunk on the show, and then later in the second half, Scott Ian of Anthrax. And, Eddie, like you, like me, we're all sort of podcast guys, and we all have our varying degrees of success, of course. Do you enjoy Eddie's show?
I think his show is awesome, especially the podcast, especially, for people who can't access the syndicated show. The podcast is a great option, and, it's not like it takes a dip in quality. There's fantastic content on there. So, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. And, I've always, for many, many years, going back to the 90s, I've known of Eddie Trunk because living in Montreal, we don't get that metal show up here. We didn't get the New York show, so I'd only get to hear Eddie when I traveled. But then I would read, Sammy Hagar's on Eddie, and Eddie Van Halen, and Axl Rose, and you go, damn it. And now, thanks to podcasts, you could be sitting in Fiji, for crying out loud, and you can now get to listen to Eddie, to you, to me. And I think it's just a great medium. And I really do think that between that and satellite radio, I really sort of feel that that's where broadcasting is going, because folks like that on-demand stuff. They like videos on demand, which is YouTube. They like TV shows on demand, which is Netflix. And I think they like their talk shows on demand.
For sure. It's like the best thing about podcasts is that people get to get their stuff on demand, but also you're the boss of yourself. You don't have to report to any radio station or anything. So it's, beneficial on both sides, in my opinion.
It really is. And of course, you're on here today because, listen, if you're going to talk to Eddie Trunk about podcasts, you're also going to talk to Eddie Trunk about Kiss.
Of course.
And who's a better co-host than a kid or a guy who has a podcast who also talks about Kiss? Right?
I don't know. I couldn't think of something else.
You're ideal. And of course, with that, let me just remind folks that this episode of One on One with Mitch Lafon is brought to you by the A World with Heroes, the EP mastered by Mayor Applebaum. And of course, the EP features songs by the Killer Dwarves, Matt Bradshaw, Crash Kelly, Dick Wagner, and Sudden Flames. And of course, all the monies go to the Vaudreuil-Soulanges Palliative Care Home in Hudson, Quebec. And while you're on iTunes looking up the EP, head back and look at the first full album, A World with Heroes, which came out last year. Pretty much had everybody on it, I think.
Yeah, a ton of people.
Did you ever get a chance to hear either one of the EP or the actual album?
I would if I wasn't living off $15 a week. I still am 16, folks.
That's right. But definitely worth checking out. So speaking of checking out, why don't we just listen to Eddie talk to us about podcasting, talk to us about Kiss, Ace Frehley, and some of the new music from 2014 that he thinks is cool and that he thinks you should be listening to as well. Here's Eddie Trunk. We are talking with Eddie Trunk. Good day, sir.
How are you, Mitch? Good to talk to you.
Good. Oh, always a pleasure talking to you. The first thing I want to talk to you about is your podcast. You're on radio, you're doing the VH1 stuff. What got you into doing the Eddie Trunk podcast?
Well, I resisted for a long time. I had gotten a number of requests from my audience asking me if I would do one and if I thought about doing one, and I always kind of stayed away from it for a couple of reasons. Number one, as you mentioned, I do a couple radio shows a week, so I thought it would probably be a little redundant to try to do another platform like a podcast. And also, it's such a cluttered world. It just seemed like to me that just about everybody out there was doing a podcast. So I was like, well, I don't know, is it going to stand out? Is it going to get lost in the shuffle? I mean, it just was an extra layer of something to take on that I just didn't know if it was going to be worth it for my time. But I met with a company called Podcast One that produces some pretty big ones, and they sat down and talked to me, and they, to be honest with you, I hadn't spent a lot of time even listening to podcasts prior to doing one. And they gave me the whole upside of it, and they showed me some of the ins and outs and what they could do for me and how they could help market it and advertise it. And it seemed like it made sense to at least try and give it a year and see what happens with it. And the other thing I really liked about it is that with radio, it's if you miss it, it's gone. Unless, of course, somebody records it and puts it on YouTube or something like that. I mean, I've done so many great interviews that over the decades that people would be like, I've never heard that one, and it's really frustrating. So it's cool to have something that's kind of archival and is up there, that it's available globally, that it's free. I mean, all of that really played into it, making a lot of sense to at least try doing. And I can do some different things with it as well. The other thing that I hope to do, I haven't really done yet, but I hope to do is, I'm very much put in the box of hard rock and metal, but there are some other people I'd like to talk to, and hopefully I'll be able to do that going forward, and that's something that I want to expand into.
Is it something that you can actually make money at? Because you have said there are a lot of players out there, a lot of guys doing podcasts, and it's tough, right? What's sort of the formula to make money at this? Or is it sort of like it's a platform that leads you to the appearances, and it's a platform that leads you to the T-shirt sales? Or is this actually a business model?
For me, I don't know yet. It's way too early to know. I'm not making any money at it right now. The idea is it would be nice to make money. I mean, obviously, I love doing all this stuff, but there's a financial component as well. You got to support yourself. You got to support your family. So I hope that those opportunities present themselves. It's one of the things that Podcast One, the company I'm with, is good at. They've sold Walmart as a sponsor for a few weeks, and some other clients. So. And there's certain restrictions that come with that, though. There's certain things they do and don't want you to do to help them sell advertising. But, fortunately, I have a good following because of my radio shows, because of my TV show. So as a result, the thing's been, done very well in terms of numbers. And unlike radio, in podcast world, I mean, you see exactly how many people have listened to it. So you're selling real numbers. And so far my numbers have been great. So we'll see. We'll see what it turns into. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I signed with this company for a year. And after a year, if I don't, it does add a whole nother layer of things that I need to focus on and work on to do this every week. So if I don't see a great return on it, not a great return, but enough to at least make sense to put the time into it, I don't know if I'll do it for the long haul. The flip side to that, though, is if I do get some traction on it, and I am able to make a little bit of money out of it, then I might actually chase it more and do more than one a week and try to do more, because there's nothing better than having full control over what you do and when you do it. Right. And if I'm able to do that, I mean, I guess the ultimate success model for podcasts would be, a guy like Adam Carolla, who has, done tremendously well and has a studio and a staff and does 5 a day and all that. So if you can reach that point, then that's the best of both worlds. Then you don't have to deal with any BS from, radio or what have you, if you want to try to move fully into that area. But that takes a lot of work too.
But you said that the sponsors can affect a bit of the content, I guess, in a sense of maybe swearing or maybe some of the. Okay. So you
that's really it. That's the only thing I was asked to do early on. In other words, a sponsor like Walmart comes on, they don't want any obscenities in it. It's less sellable if you do a lot of, if you curse a lot. If there's language in there, it's a harder thing to sell to some sponsors. It's not a big issue for me. I don't need to curse. I don't curse a lot anyway. I don't do it just for shock effect. So if it's if that's a small concession, if it makes it easy for the company to sell it.
Yeah, it would make sense. Now, you of course got your two books, the Essential Hard Rock and Heavy Metal Guides. Is there a third one coming down the pike?
Since the second one rather, just turned 1 year old, so a lot of people have started to ask that question actually, and there will be another book. I just don't know what it's going to be yet. I haven't decided. I don't know if it's going to be a third installment of the format of the books like I'm currently doing them, or if it's going to be at some point I want to write more of like an autobiography, more of like 30 years of how I did this and the stories behind the scenes and what have you. And I'd like to do that. I just don't know if that would be the next thing that I do, or if that's a little bit further down the line.
Yeah,
sorry about that. So I'm not sure yet what it's going to be, but it's probably at least a year or two away before I even put something out. But I am starting to think about it.
I do want to get into talking Kiss with you, because that's sort of a topic that I think we both know ad nauseum. But how did you do this? I mean, you were at Megaforce Records, and 1994 roughly, you switched into radio. How did you go from the guy sort of in the back office at a record company to being the guy up front on a radio station? How did that transition happen?
Well, when I was working for record companies and doing the behind-the-scenes stuff, I was still on the weekends doing radio. I wore both hats. I was on both sides of the fence. Okay. And I always enjoyed that. I always enjoyed, living both lives, so to speak. So it wasn't until 94 that I decided to fully chase the broadcasting side, because that was the first time that I moved my radio show into New York City. Right. And once I got on a New York City station, the reach became so much greater, the opportunity became greater, and I said, okay, I'm going to run with this for a little bit, and that's what I've been doing ever since. And that radio show has led to TV and everything else. Okay. But it wasn't until I got into such a big market like New York that I chased it as my main thing. But up until that point, when I was working for record companies, management companies, what have you, I always did my radio shows on the weekend. I always had that side as well. So when the label stuff started to dry up for me and so many others a little bit, that's when I kind of chased the other side, and that seemed to emerge a little bit more.
Chased the other, yeah. Gene Simmons, one of our favorite topics, has said a bunch of really interesting things over the last few months. If you're depressed, basically he said, go jump off a bridge. If you're in a rock band, he said, don't bother, rock is dead. He has those opinions on this stuff. But then his partner or friend of years and years ago, Steve Coronel, gets arrested on alleged child pornography charges. And he says absolutely nothing. Should he say something? And are you disappointed that he said nothing to date?
I don't know enough.
That's a tough one. That's a tough
No, well, I don't know enough about that story, to be totally honest with you. I just heard a little bit about it, so I really don't know. I have no idea what his relationship is still with that guy, or how close he still is with him. It's hard to really say. I just haven't followed that all that closely. Okay. Listen, I mean, as far as Gene is concerned, I mean, he's an outspoken guy, and I tend to like and appreciate guys that are outspoken, whether I agree with them or not. So I certainly I certainly don't agree with all the positions and things that he says, but I actually like the fact that he feels kind of unfiltered enough to say them. I mean, it's the same kind of thing as like Ted Nugent. People ask me all the time about Nugent, who I've gotten to know quite well and done a number of things with recently. And, it's a very love-hate thing with Nugent because he's so outspoken about stuff. And I say to people all the time, I don't agree with everything that Nugent has to say by any stretch, but I actually appreciate and respect people who have the stones to put their own convictions out there. I mean, we're in such a PC sanitized world where everybody was ready to pounce at the first thing that people disagree with. That I like when people actually will say something that, gets you thinking and maybe stirs the pot a little bit. So, I don't know Gene's relationship with that guy. I don't know that guy. I don't know the story. I don't know if he's been found guilty. I'm not sure.
No. They arrested him recently, and they've charged him with 5 counts of possession of child pornography and that kind of stuff. And as far as Gene's relationship with him, I don't know if they have any at all, other than he wrote Going Blind. He wrote She, and we're looking at 40 years ago. It's just the relationship is that a lot of newspapers, the Daily Mail in the UK and stuff, have said, Kiss songwriter arrested on child porn charges. And it's like, oof, you've got the band image and the band name being put in that same sentence, and you'd figure that the band would want to distance themselves or say something, not just go, oh crap, hope nobody notices, because it's all over the media. And I was kind of thinking Gene would say something to at least distance himself from the whole situation.
Yeah, I think that in his mind, probably saying something about it actually makes him closer to it.
Okay. True.
I think that probably the best thing to do is to not acknowledge it. I mean, there's a ton of people that have written songs with Kiss, and I don't know where their relationship still is. As fans, we kind of, when somebody does something, even if it's 40 years ago, it seems still kind of current to us. And in our mind, all these artists and all these people who have ever worked together are still working together. They're still friends. They're still in touch. They're still connected to each other. When the reality is so very different. And a quick example of that is that I recently was talking with Joe Perry backstage at an Aerosmith show, and Ralph Morman, who's the singer on the first Joe Perry Project album, recently passed away.
That's correct.
And I love the first Project album, and really, really love that record. And I didn't know Ralph Morman, but I saw Joe, and I said to him, too bad about Ralph Morman. And he said, oh, yeah, that was a bummer. And I said, did you were in touch with him, or did you, and he goes, oh, no, I didn't talk to the guy in decades. He said, I sent some flowers and stuff, but we weren't in touch. Now, to me, listening to the Joe Perry Project, I'm listening to that record, and I'm still in my mind thinking that, there's this great band, and this was this cool thing. And in reality, it's something that was 34 years ago that was a one-time record, and so that's it's a different perspective we have on how these guys relate to each other as fans versus the reality, I think, and that could very well be the case with Gene and Steve Coronel. I just don't know much about where things stand with them.
Yeah, it was a shocking story. And by the way, you're talking about people who like to be very outspoken. You mentioned Ted Nugent. Recently on your show, you had Brian Vollmer of Helix. And for us Canadians, he's sort of the Ted Nugent of Canada. If you go to his Facebook and you go to his Planet Helix website and stuff, there's a lot of commentary about conservative this and conservative that, and the liberals are bad here, and the liberal. He's another interesting character.
I wasn't aware of any of that until after I spoke with him at all. To be honest with you, I heard about that after he was on my show, and I would have loved to have talked to him about it, but I had no clue. I don't know Brian that well. Yeah. I met him a couple years ago on the Monsters of Rock cruise. We talked for a while, and I met him and his wife. We hung out a bit, and he put out this record, and he wanted to come on the show and said if there was an opportunity. So it was great to have him on for a few minutes, but I didn't know that side of him at all. And next time I talk to him, I'd be curious to get, I mean, I tend to keep my conversations about music anyway, but I didn't know that was his thing.
He's just, I was listening to it and I was going, Oh, if only he knew that he's speaking to the Canadian Ted Nugent. Ace
Yeah, no
Frehley.
clue.
Yeah, Ace Frehley. You have a great relationship with Ace, and I had a chance to speak with him recently. Do you think it's a good idea, bad idea, or just sort of there it is to get Richie Scarlett back in the band?
I think it's a great idea. I was just talking to somebody else about this a little while ago, and Ace actually called me and asked me what I thought, and I told him I thought it would be a great idea as well because, when I signed Ace to his deal to Megaforce, when we signed him, Richie was in the band, and
Right.
we were all kind of surprised. I mean, Ace was the only one signed to the deal, but we were all surprised that when he announced, when he started making that first record, that he was going to bring in a different guitar player. And we never quite figured out why, except for the fact that it seemed like he had wanted some fresh blood at that point. And certainly Todd came in and did a great job while he was there. Mm-hmm. But we never quite understood why Richie was, not included in that first record. And then a number of years later, Richie came back and was a part of Trouble Walkin' and came in with some great songs. And I just always thought, just as a fan, in the earliest days of the Frehley's Comet Band and all that Richie was just a great compliment to Ace. He, very New York sort of street rocker sort of guy, great player, great singer, great on stage. So I think it's great that he's back, and it definitely, I think gives brings back some good memories, and it's probably good for Ace to have him back out there with him.
Yeah, and musically, I think it's a great fit.
The cool thing, Mitch, about this band, and of course they haven't played live yet, but the cool thing about it, I think, is the fact that all four guys can sing lead vocals, mm-hmm. and that's going to really enable him to be able to. It's going to really enable him to pretty much perform anything as far as live, and I think that's really good.
Yeah, that's what's going to be exciting is that it's, and I don't want to make comparisons, but it's going to sort of be like a Kiss show where Ace will be able to sit back and do his guitar thing while Richie sings a song, and then Richie can sit back and do his guitar thing while Ace sings a song, and then of course the drummer, and it's going to be, hopefully it'll give us a longer set list, seeing that everybody will get a little moment to shine, and it'll be fun.
Yeah, I think Ace likes, one of the things he said to me too, is he likes when some of the pressure of having to sing and play the whole set is off of him. So and he's always had that. I mean, when Scott Coogan, who's back in, he sang lead on some stuff. He's always had other guys that can sing. So I agree with you. I think that it would be a good balance, and hopefully it's a good set list, a cross section of material. I haven't talked to him yet or seen what he's planning on doing as far as a live show and material, but there's certainly a lot to pick from now.
Yeah, there really is. At a stop in San Francisco promoting his book, Paul Stanley was asked a question about you, and he said, and I'm paraphrasing, that it was sort of like a Wayne World show. It was, insulting and sort of flippant. Any response to that, or is it just like, all right already, get over it?
No, I responded at the time. I actually thought it was pretty funny because I've, and this is the truth, I've actually often referred to the show, to that metal show, as Wayne's World. Right. I've referred to it as Wayne's World. I've referred to it as Beavis and Butthead. Nobody goofs around about what we do more than us ourselves. So I didn't take offense to it at all. I think that he probably thought that he was taking a little bit of a shot, and if that's what he wants to do, that's fine. I think that the problem, unfortunately, which he doesn't quite understand, is that if he meant it as a diss, and of course he did, he's dissing the show that probably 90% of his fans watch.
Right.
I mean, so you're really, he's not thinking that out too much, because we have maybe more Kiss fans in our audience and see more Kiss shirts when we tape than any other band. We, contrary to what people think, we have spoken positively and had Kiss on our top 5 lists. I know I have personally in so many instances, in so many ways, but that, of course, is forgotten and ignored as well. So, whatever his hang-up is unfortunate, but what he doesn't maybe quite see is, our door is open, and we'd love to have him on and have an intelligent, in-depth conversation about all eras of the band. Myself and Don are huge fans and always have been. Jim, not so much, but
he prefers Rush.
No, Jim's not a big Rush guy either. But
what's his band then?
Sabbath.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, we would love to have him on, and our door is and always does remain open. But he doesn't quite understand, like I said, that his fans. There's a segment of people out there always like, oh, Eddie, you should get over it. He's not coming on the show or whatever. I was over it a long time ago.
Right.
We've certainly moved on and had a ton of guests, and we have a ton of great guests that want to do the show continually. But who hasn't moved on from it are the fans, because the fans want to see him on the show that they watch, and Gene for that matter, because it's a music show. They don't want to see him for 5 minutes on CNN talking about whatever he's talking about. That's not what they're watching. They want to see him sit for an hour with us and talk about, what makes the world go round from Unmasked, or only the stuff that we would get into, that, the real deep stuff. And we'd love to do that. But it's important to note that, like the piece you're talking about, it was a fan that asked him.
Right.
In Rolling Stone, when the Hall of Fame was announced, Rolling Stone asked Gene about coming on that metal show. It's not us. Our door on the record is open if and when any of them want to come on, but it's the fans that can't quite figure this out. So for him to take shots, which he's well within his right to do, he's, like I said, he's dissing the show that they watch. And it's unfortunate. And then the strangest thing just happened earlier this week when his official Twitter pumped out at that metal show. I don't know if you heard about that one, but that really got people talking too.
Yeah, no, I didn't hear about that one. I think, and I'm speaking from a fan's perspective, what we would like, and I don't represent all the fans, but I'm going to sound like I do, is that Kiss give an honest interview, and I think that you are the guy that could get that honest interview and ask questions we would like to hear. And the problem that I see with both Gene and Paul these days is that they just want to do sound bites and infomercials. They're not interested in answering anything honestly. And on your show, it would have to be an honest interview. It wouldn't be, pre-approved questions. It wouldn't be all sugar-coated. And I don't know if they can handle that anymore. Now, I'm going to get a lot of hate for saying that, but I think they just want to stick to the sound bites. And CNN is sound bites.
Yeah, I think that to a degree, I think you're actually pretty spot on with that. I think that there's a point where if you're too much of a fan and you know too much of the history, you almost become more of a threat. And I think that's what happens in many instances. It's just like they're much more comfortable going on some sort of show on TV where a producer gave the host a one-sheet with the bullet points of the current project that they're promoting,
right,
who's going to ask those questions, get them on for 5-10 minutes, let them sell their stuff, and get off.
Right.
And I'll tell you, I was told when Paul did promotion for his book, he did not and would not do any music-based shows. He didn't want to do anything that was like music-based for whatever reason. And I mean, I know he wasn't going to do anything with me, but I meant just in general, like there were things he wouldn't do. There were a number of popular shows that he didn't do. I mean, if people have said things critical, I guess, and he's found out, he steers away from that, Opie and Anthony, Howard Stern, whatever the case may be. Yeah. So, he admits in his book, and everybody knows this, that he's an extremely sensitive guy, and that that's, you know, I'm not judging him one way or the other, but I think that plays largely into some of the decisions on what he does and doesn't do. As I've said a million times, I'm a fan. I'll always be a fan, even though I'm not down with what the band does now. That's fine. That's their prerogative to do it. I just, if I'm asked my opinion on something, I'm going to give it honestly, just like I hope anybody else would.
Yeah, I mean, I like what the band does now. I just think they should put a little more effort into being better at it. And by that, I mean, if you're going to go on tour for your 40th anniversary, 40 songs or 14 songs in 75 minutes to represent 40 years of career and then not switch it up from night to night seems a little lazy to me. You know.
I think that's a byproduct of a couple things. It comes with when you're in your mid-60s and it's hard to get up there and do it still and have the energy. And I also think that it's a byproduct of quite honestly their draw. They have to co-headline. They cannot fill buildings without a co-headlining situation. I mean, that's at least in America, and that's been proven with co-headlines with Aerosmith, with Motley, with Def Leppard. They need to go out with a partner and give equal billing time. Most bands don't do that unless they have to. You know, you have an opening act that does 45 and you come out and do 2 hours. So when you have to do a co-headline, you simply can't play that long because of curfews, and you have to cut your set down. So I think it's a product of both of those things. Of course, they'll never say that because they will tell you they're bigger than ever. But, you know, I've said many times, bands that are bigger than ever do not go out 50-50 on set lists. They go out and headline.
Listen, a band that you were involved in the early days, Metallica, they're not in their 60s, but they're getting up in age. They're not co-headlining. They're doing 2.5 hour or 2 hours and 15 minutes per night, and they change their set list every night. If you want to ask me what band is doing it right, the answer is Metallica.
Well, that's true, but that's from a little bit of that's from a 10-year more recent era. The band I would give you as far as a band from Kiss's era that does it right is Aerosmith.
Right.
Aerosmith, without question, to me, and I say this across the board of any band from the 70s, to me, Aerosmith is far and away the best for a lot of reasons. They're still the original five guys. They play a 2-hour set. They put songs in from, they're a band, that's a band that could literally do all hits in 2 hours because they have so many from different decades. They don't. They leave half of their hits on the table and they put in deep tracks because they like playing them and for the hardcore fans. So it's a great balanced set. They're actually playing Everything Is Real. There's things aren't on tracks. Yes, they have a guy that helps them with vocals, but they introduce them. They don't hide them. It's remarkable what Aerosmith still does. Steven Tyler is, as far as a frontman and singer, as good as he's ever been. He'll only do 2 shows a week because of it, because he needs the energy and he needs the rest, but so be it. I mean, when I go see Aerosmith, and I had this conversation with Slash, who just opened for them, you realize that mid-60s isn't a death sentence if you find a way to make it all work. And what's really crazy about Aerosmith is, you know, they're notorious for drugs and the dysfunction and all the problems they had, but they've come out of it the other side better than anybody, in my opinion.
You're absolutely right. I'll ask you one last question about Kiss, and it's the Fourth and Loud show about that football team. Good TV, bad TV, don't care about it, love it. What's your take on that?
Interesting timing for you to ask me about that, because I just last night went into my on-demand and watched a couple episodes. I had watched the first one, and I didn't have much interest in it from the first episode, and then I went back and watched a few more. Because even though I'm not an arena football fan, I am a big football fan.
Right.
And it's still some form of football. The other reason why I had a curiosity about it is because the co-owner of that team, and I've never mentioned or talked about this at all yet to anybody, but the co-owner of that team, Brett Bushy, contacted me the week before that show started to air, and asked me if he could come on my radio shows to promote it. And I respectfully told him that I would take a pass simply because with all respect to him, I said, if I'm going to have somebody on talking about a KISS-related product, I need either Gene or Paul to do it. And, of course, they're not going to, how dare they would ever talk to such an enemy like Eddie Trunk.
Right.
So he was aware that there was an issue there. And I had a bunch of email exchanges with him. And he said, I really am trying to get these guys to understand. He said, because I'm a fan of yours, he said, and I realize all the good things you say and do about KISS. He said, and I really wish they would understand that a little bit. And I said, so do I. I said, my door, tell them, to both of them, that my door is more than open should they want to come on and talk about their football team or anything else and have a great conversation. So he said he was going to work on that, and he understood my position on it. I said, I can't have the third owner that nobody knows on promoting a KISS product. It's just going to look stupid to my audience. I need to tell those guys they want to come on and do it. So I didn't hear anything for a little while, and I watched that first episode, and he asked me what I thought of it, and I said I thought it was okay. My assessment of the first episode was I thought that you unfortunately, because arena football is so niche and so small in such a smaller sport, you don't really care too much about the teams or the players. You don't know them. And my interest was more when Gene and Paul were on the screen because I care more about KISS than arena football.
Absolutely.
And I thought that was the challenge, is trying to find that balance within the show. And now that I've watched a few more on demand or whatever, I think they have. I think they've done a good job with it. I think that it's basically, to me, it's Hard Knocks for arena football with KISS as the owners.
Right.
And it's obviously produced well. It's shot well. It looks, unlike Gene's reality show, it looks somewhat real. I mean, obviously there's got to be some scripting and setup involved, but it looks somewhat real. And I think that above and beyond the KISS angle to it, if you are an arena football team, it can only help maybe create some awareness for that sport, which is, extremely niche and traditionally never works in big markets. It's more a tertiary market, small market sort of thing.
Agreed.
So I don't know, how it's going to do. I really haven't felt much heat about it. I don't know many people who are watching it, haven't heard much about it outside of like the hardcore KISS fans. But, I thought it was entertaining as I watched it more. And then this guy, Brett, got in touch with me a few weeks ago because Gene was in New York doing press for it and was right at my Sirius XM radio studio and didn't, do my show. And I said to him, he came back to me. I said, Brett, the guy's right there. Tell him to come on. And apparently Brett got back to me and said, I think I have Gene for this Monday. I think he's going to come on your show. Will you have him on? I said, yeah. I've said all the while the door's open. And then just nothing happened. I maintain, as I've said all along, I think Gene would do anything with me and love to get into debate and discussion. I just don't think he does it because he doesn't want to upset Paul, who by all accounts runs KISS these days.
Yeah, I think has run KISS for the last 25 years, quite frankly.
And as I've said before, I met with Gene a couple years ago in L.A. There's photos of it. It's been well documented. We had a great discussion. He reiterated to me 100 times he had no issue with me at all. So, again, I think that there's another force at play here.
Which is too bad. Let's just move away from KISS for a second. We're coming towards the second half of 2014. We're getting to the end. What for you are some of the best records this year? And I'll just throw out three that I really like. Ace Frehley, Space Invader was great. The new Gary Sharon Hertzmile Retro Grenade is fantastic, and the Electric Boys out in Sweden put out Starflight United, and it's brilliant. What are your picks?
Things I like. The thing I like the most so far as new stuff, new bands, new music, is a group called Pharmakos.
Okay.
Which is Joe Holmes, who was in Ozzy's band for about 5 years, but never made a record with him.
Made one song with him.
What's that?
He made one song with Ozzy, Walk on Water, I think it was.
That he played on?
Yep.
Oh, you stumped me on that one. I know he wrote a couple, but I didn't know he actually played on one.
Yeah, it's on the what was Ozzy's box set called? Was it Prince of Darkness or something like that?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll have to look that up. But Joe's a brilliant player. Was off the scene for a while. He's put this new band together that's kind of like I think it's kind of like Alice in Chains meets Soundgarden, but with tons of ripping guitar, and I love it. And it's called Pharmakos, and that's going to be coming out. So I like that a lot. I like this band from LA called King, Kyng.
Okay.
Their second record just came out. It's a trio of young guys, huge riffs, great vocals. Band from LA called Rival Sons has a few records out. I like what they're doing.
Yeah, they're really good.
Very retro, very retro sound, but I think that's really cool as well. And there's a lot of stuff out there that I like. I'm very encouraged by a lot of the new music I'm hearing, and there's also you have the classic guys that have been around forever who I think are making some great new music as well.
Well, what are some of the better records just in general? Are you a big fan of the Ace record, or do you think the Ace record is good, great? What you expected, not what you expected, could be better?
I think it for me falls somewhere between good and great. I think great might be a little strong. I think good might be a little light. I'd give it maybe somewhere around a 7 on a 1 to 10. I think that what I like most about it is his voice. He has listen, Ace was never Freddie Mercury, but he has a great confidence in his voice. Mm-hmm. He's really kind of belting it out very strongly, and I like how it sits in the mix. There's a lot of conviction in his voice, so I like vocally what he's doing. I think that a lot of the songs have great hooks. They stick in your head like crazy, which is really cool. And I think his playing in a lot of places is very, very strong. The only negatives for the record for me is I think it's a little bit loud at times, meaning it's a little too hot. I have a big peeve of mine where records, when you get too compressed and it's just so volumey that you lose a little dynamics. There's a couple moments in that where it sounds like it's borderline for me on that. And the other thing is there's just a couple songs that I just think that are okay. A song like Into the Vortex doesn't do much for me.
Right.
A song like Reckless doesn't do much for me. The cover, the Steve Miller cover, although he did a fine job with it, I don't know. I don't need another cover, but I get it.
I want to ask you about that since we're talking about the cover. I have two issues with the cover. First of all, for the last 8 years, he's been running around saying, I'm sober, I'm sober, I'm sober. Gene and Paul talk to me about, they're always saying I'm a drunk, but I've been sober. And then he comes out with a new album with a song about being a pothead. And it was like, perhaps you should have chosen a different song. And then the other thing is a lot of Ace's songs that he's known for, New York Groove, Into the Night, Do You, they're all covers. So it's like, maybe it's time to just do all Ace songs and just forget the covers, but I don't know.
Well, he told me, and I was told by more than just him, that it was actually his label that wanted a cover.
Right, he told me that too.
And they want, a cover. He has it, as you just mentioned, has a history of success with covers, and I think that a cover is a good safety valve. Mm-hmm. The other thing too is that radio airplay is so impossible for so many of these artists that doing a cover, you can almost have an outside shot as like a 2 for Tuesday thing with Steve Miller and Ace's version of the Joker or something back to back. There's some loophole maybe where you actually could get played. I think all of that plays into the logic of doing a cover. I know that when he did Anomaly, I had a huge, discussion with him because there was talk that he was going to make Fox on the Run his first single. I'm like, you can't do that. And eventually he didn't. I talked him out of it. But listen, he's taking direction from a lot of different places. The fact that I don't think it's a bad version of the song. I find it entertaining, and I think he does a good job with it.
Agreed.
I just think that, it would have been, I don't, and I'll tell you the other thing, as cool as it is, the other part of the record is, another, to end with another long instrumental.
Yeah.
We've had like 3, 4, or 5 of those already, so I wouldn't have necessarily said we needed that either. The upside of the record, though, is that the rest of it, which is another 7 songs, which is probably why I said 7 out of 10, I think is great. It's great. The vocals, the hooks, the songs, I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
I think it's a much better record than I would have ever expected him to make at this point in his career.
I fully agree. And now I know you said half an hour. We're a little past that, so let me just end with this. We talked about Def Leppard in passing just before. Steve Brown of Trickster has come in for Vivian Campbell, and he's not a replacement. He's just filling in while. Do you think Viv is do you know anything about Viv's condition? Is he okay? Is he coming back? Or do you think Def Leppard should have just stopped until he came back? Is it a good idea to bring in a replacement?
Well, a couple things on that. First of all, I'm thrilled for Steve because he's an old friend.
He's a great guy.
And he's a very talented guy, and I think that it sends, whenever you see those guys there's so many of those guys that come from the 80s, early 90s bands that kind of get thrown into that category because they're just, they're relics of the 80s or they're hair metal or whatever term people throw at them. It's unfair, and I think that it's great when guys like that get a chance to show what they're about on a level playing field. So for him to have gotten that opportunity is tremendous, and I'm happy for him. Obviously, you wouldn't want it to come at Viv's expense, and I hope that Vivian gets better, and that's the paramount thing here, is that he recovers. I've spoken to Vivian. He has a very good outlook about things. The tour they did with Kiss, he was very ill during that, but he was not going to come off the road. I mean, he had told me that one of the big things in his recovery was that he didn't want mentally for being sick to take him out of missing gigs.
Right.
So it was very important for him to keep doing what he did and get through that. But I think what's happened now with Def Leppard is they've shifted into this phase where the heavy touring is done for a while.
Right.
And what you're getting is special appearances, a couple corporates, maybe a couple casino gigs, things like that. So as a result, the band's going to go out and work and make the money and do those things. They're not big, high-profile things, and you need a guy in there to fill that void. And I think Steve will do a great job for that. But I certainly hope. I'm glad for Steve to have gotten a shot here, and more importantly, I think everybody just hopes Vivian's okay and he gets back.
Yeah, and let's not forget that Steve was on the Kiss Def Leppard tour. He was sort of in the wings as a standby, and good for Viv that Steve never had to be used. Steve actually was in the wings for longer than that, okay.
Because they were concerned. They were doing these huge shows, and rightfully so. They were worried, I think, about Vivian having a reaction or some sort of problem and being stuck. So they had to have a safety valve in place. And fortunately, Vivian got through all the things that he was supposed to. But it's just a question now of if he can get back to 100% health.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Eddie Trunk podcast currently just on iTunes, or where else can we hear it?
It's available on iTunes, and you can also go to podcast1.com.
Okay.
That's podcastone.com, and that's the company I do it for. And any other, you can stream it, you can download it to other devices, you can do whatever you want with it there. It's always free and available anywhere. And yeah, the reaction's been great. I think there's about 12 episodes up there total, and everyone from Brian May to Priest to Slash to Steve Morse went up today, and there's a great variety of artists, and some of the lesser known guys too. People have really gotten a kick out of hearing from and learning about a little bit too. So that's been fun. So we'll see where that goes. It's been cool for people to check out and see all the response to it.
Absolutely. And then we've got a few appearances. October 30th is the Seminole Hard Rock down in Hollywood, Florida. And now you're hosting Judas Priest and Steel Panther. Is that basically you're just introducing them before they walk on stage, or what exactly is that event?
Yeah, I do a lot of stuff down there at that particular venue. I've done 3 shows there in the last couple months, and yeah, basically what it is so I just come out and say hello to the crowd and bring the band on. After the show, I go to the Hard Rock Cafe, which is inside the casino. I do a meet and greet and the signing, and there's not a lot of rock radio, unfortunately, in South Florida, so it's just a way for me to connect with the fans and help promote their shows down there.
Then December 13th at the Concert Pub North in Houston, Texas, a night of rock stories and trivia. So are you just sort of doing a talk, like sort of a town hall kind of thing?
Yeah, I did it there once before last year. It was really successful. We had about 600 people show up, and bands play after me. And yeah, it's Q&A, it's stories. It's just me up there for an hour and a half having fun with the crowd, and it went over great last time I did it. I do shows like that sometimes, and I also do shows with Don and Jim where we do they do stand up, and we do a kind of a loose version of that metal show on stage as well. So we did a bunch of those over the summer. Those are pretty much done until next year. So everything else is just kind of a patchwork of different stuff on the road that comes up.
Well, that's the last one that I see listed is the Mexicali Live. And listen, I don't know how to say this city, but Teaneck, New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And that's you, Eddie, you, Don, and Jim doing sort of a metal show kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah, and I don't know when this posts, but I'll be at in Louisiana, actually.
Right.
And that's, I think that's the
October 10th and 11th, yeah, at the Paragon Casino Rockfest.
Yeah, I'll be hosting a Rockfest there as well. So there's some other stuff coming up, too, that'll be announced soon. And as things get confirmed, I put it right up on my site, right on the homepage of EddieTrunk.com.
Absolutely. Eddie, pleasure. Always fun chatting with you. And,
Mitch, good to talk to you as well, and good luck with your podcast going forward, man.
There you have it, folks. My interview with Eddie Trunk of the Eddie Trunk Podcast, that metal show, and of course, from his various radio gigs all over the world. And of course, he's got a bunch of personal appearances coming up. I urge you to go check those out. Cassius, while we're here, what would you like to plug in terms of where should folks find you?
You guys can find me at thatreporterkid.com. I'm still using the nickname, even though the show name has changed. And a big one I'm trying to advertise is the Facebook page. So if you go to facebook.com/Cassius Show, CASSIUS, there's plenty of awesome content, and I like to take feedback from the listeners to see what they want to hear. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, before we move on to Scott Ian, who has said over the years that he's a huge Kiss fan and Kiss has changed his life, you came on this podcast a while back, and we did that Ace Frehley interview. A lot of great feedback on that interview. Did you enjoy it? Was it good to be part of the podcast?
It was fantastic, and I enjoyed being on it as much as I did listening to it. I like that you asked about some second sighting stuff and some questions that you normally don't hear. It was great.
Yeah, it really was, and I think it was great to have you on that one. That said, let's move into Scott Ian. I mean, the guy's got a ton of stuff going on. He's got a new autobiography called "I'm the Man," the story of a guy, or the story of that guy from Anthrax. He's got a Speaking Words DVD, which has become Swearing Words, and of course, Anthrax has a new live DVD from Santiago, Chile, and because there's always an and. The band is currently writing material for a new album. No timeline given as to when that might come out, other than it'll be what it'll be. Anthrax, older thrash metal band, in or out of your sort of realm of the world. Is that something that do you know Anthrax at all? Are you an Anthrax fan, or are those sort of one of those? Okay, I know they're as old as Kiss, but I completely missed them.
I've heard a handful of songs of theirs, especially on the Decibel Geek podcast. Shout out to Chris Sinzak. That's kind of was my introduction to Anthrax, and I love what I've heard. They're a very cool band, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from them.
Yeah, so why don't we get straight into Scott Ian of Anthrax talking autobiography, DVDs, and why he loves Kiss. There's always a Kiss connection. Here is Scott Ian. Count it in. 3, 2, 1. We are talking with Scott Ian of Anthrax. Good day, sir.
Hey, how are you?
Good. So there's so much to talk about. You've got the Speaking Word, which I guess has become the Swearing Word DVD. You've got the Anthrax, Chili DVD, and of course your book. Why don't we start with that? Tell me a little about the "I'm the Man" book. What motivated you to write a autobiography?
Well, the book came out of the talking shows. I I had just a couple of years ago, I started actually just writing down a lot of stories. A lot of these stories that I've had in my head for years and years are stories that I hang out when I'm with my friends, or, and just we bullshit, and everybody's telling stories, crazy shit that's gone on over the last 30 years. And I actually started writing things down because I found that I was starting to forget things, and I definitely didn't want to lose any of that information. So I kind of started writing it down, and then I got the opportunity to do a talking show in London. And, I already had a lot of this stuff written down, and I was able to just kind of cull, from that say, all right, I figure I know how to get on stage and do this. Hopefully it'll work. It did work. I had fun doing it. And, basically I had a lot of these stories written down, and I've been asked for a few years to do a book because, like, everybody was doing a book, but I always said no. And then once I had these things written, I figured, like, well, I've got a lot of the work done now, because that was always my fear, was I can't commit to the work that it would take to do a book.
Right.
But I had already done a lot of the work. So that was kind of like the catalyst, was just basically me not wanting to forget stuff, and then going out and doing the talking shows and having so much fun telling the stories. I felt like, all right, now I kind of at least have a start on a book. I kind of see how I can possibly do this, and that kind of opened the door for me.
Tell me a little bit about performing on those speaking word dates as opposed to playing guitar in Anthrax. How do you sort of prepare yourself for these speaking engagements? And, was there any fear getting out there? I mean, plugging in a guitar and running out a solo is one thing, but now people are listening to you. Did you get a sense of, what have I gotten myself into?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, I know I could tell a story. Excuse me. I know I could tell a story, and I've got great stories, but the idea of standing on stage and, knowing that people have paid money to see me stand here and entertain them with, like, just my brain and my mouth and a microphone. It was definitely a whole new world for me, way outside of the bubble that I generally comfortably live in. It's not like I just knew how to do it, like in Anthrax, I know how to put on my guitar and get on stage and do a show. With or without rehearsal, or it's going to happen, whereas this was all new for me, and I still get nervous. It's not like I've done it for years and it's become automatic. It's still very nerve-wracking for me to get up. And even though I know I can do it now, and I've gotten good at it, I still get very nervous about walking on stage and just telling stories, because I still feel like I have a lot to prove as that kind of a performer. It's certainly not an automatic at all.
With that tour coming to an end and the DVD coming out soon, is this something that you'd like to transition into? Maybe get a radio gig, or maybe start thinking of doing another speaking tour in 2015, or was this sort of a one-shot deal and a DVD is sort of our memento, and okay, let me get back to making music?
I haven't thought it through that much. Truthfully, it's it's something that I really enjoy doing.
Okay.
And I want to do more of, but I haven't really thought it that far into the future.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit.
I definitely put it this way. I definitely want to do more shows.
Okay.
I love doing the shows, and schedule permitting, it's something that I'll continue doing. But past that, no, I haven't really thought anything past that.
Okay. The last time I saw Anthrax was this year at the Heavy Montreal Festival. I just wanted to ask you what you think of the Heavy Montreal Festival and what it means to have that kind of festival in North America.
Oh, it's great. I mean, we've been lucky enough to play it a few times now, and Montreal it's always a great city for metal. The crowd there is great, and so getting to do that festival, and it's become a real established, thing now. It's awesome. The people who put it on are great.
Yep.
The fans are amazing. The amenities at the show are great. They really take care. You know what, Mitch, you got to pause a second. My wife is calling. I think I got to grab it. One moment.
Okay.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello? Oh, hey, sorry.
Yeah, not a problem. So let's
But,
just...
but yeah, it's a great festival, and the one we just did, with Metallica as the headliner, and from what we were told, that was the biggest one in the history of Heavy Montreal. So
It was.
we're just so stoked that we've gotten to do it a few times, and we obviously look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, I certainly hope you get to come back. It's a great festival. Let's talk Anthrax. So the DVD Chile On Hell just came out. Tell me a little bit about that show, and then sort of what's coming up next. I know you said you've written 16 or 17 songs for a new album. Let's just talk about the DVD first. What was so special about Chile and that show that you had to just get it on DVD?
Well, the previous two shows that we had done in Santiago, over let's say 3 years or 4 years leading up to when we shot the DVD, both of those shows were just, at the end of a tour or the end of a run, we were able to say, all right, the best show was Santiago.
Right.
And then you come back 2 years later, and again, the best show was Santiago. So once we realized we wanted to document the worship music cycle, we thought, all right, well, we should probably shoot the Santiago show because, they've kind of proven how amazing it is there, and that kind of takes that anomaly out of the equation. We don't have to worry about it being a great show from a crowd point of view. But then at the same time, I was a little worried, well, what if they don't live up to it? What if it's not as good as, the last two times? But they quickly eased that fear that night. And so all we had to worry about was playing our songs and us putting on a good show. And I know we're going to do that. So
Yeah.
it just made our lives easier knowing we were shooting it in front of that crowd.
Yeah, and it looks great, by the way. Musically, though, what's the timeline for a new album? I mean, you've got these, as you said in other interviews, 16 or 17 songs ready or in state of preparedness. When are we trying to get this out? 2015, 2016?
2015 is definitely I would like to say it's a safe call. But at the same time, we don't have a start date yet. It's not like we have a studio date where we're going to start tracking. So, just like the last record, when we're done, we're done. You can't.
Right.
I hate to use an analogy like this, but you can't bake a cake any faster. If you rush it, it's going to taste like shit.
Right.
So it's just the way we've looked at our records ever since Stadium Euphoria. Well, because we've rushed that album. We will never rush a record again. We'll never start unless we are all on the same page of, yes, we're ready to go. The songs are there. Let's do it. And especially after worship music and everything we went through on that record, there's no reason to rush this. Right. There's nothing out there that would make us think we have to get the record done. Like, the record's done when the record's done, when we're finished writing, and then we'll start recording. And things are moving along well. The ideas keep coming, and and we're material-wise, we're really happy with where we are, but we don't have a start date yet. Let's put it that way.
I guess the obvious question is, given the internet and given the state of music, is there even any reason to make a new album? Could you not be as successful on tour just playing the old catalog stuff?
Yeah, you could. for sure, but it's what we do.
Okay.
We love writing songs. As long as we have something to say, we're going to record it. We're a band, and we love doing that. It's all a part of why we're still a band. It's not just the touring. It's not just the songwriting. It's not just making the record. It's all of it. We feel like, it's still the whole package. Whether or not you need to make a new record, we really don't give a shit about that. I look at lots of other bands, and it's very easy for me to say as a fan, why bother making a record? People only want to hear your greatest hits anyway.
Right.
But as a guy in a band, I understand why bands still make records, because I still want to make records.
Okay.
Whether or not people want to hear them, I want to make them, and that's really all that matters.
Well, speaking as a fan, I do want to hear it. So I'm glad that you guys.
Look, we know we're not blind to the fact that Works of Music put us back on the map in a big way, and there are a lot of people around the planet that want to hear new Anthrax songs. I mean, we know that to be true.
Right.
We're not just making a record in a vacuum and nobody's going to hear it. We understand people still want to hear new songs, but the idea is out there. It is true that these days, just to answer your question, you don't need a new record anymore to go on tour. It's not like it was in the past.
Right. Earlier this year, your singer, Joey Belladonna, said, I don't really talk to the other guys in the band, and he sort of had this, woe is me, I'm not feeling loved. Why do you think 30-some years later he sort of feels that way? Is it just he was just having a bad day, or?
I don't know, because I texted him after my mother told me on the phone she just saw something online that Joey Belladonna says you guys aren't friends. And I said, that's kind of weird because I'm texting with him right now. And I wrote, hey, what's going on? We're not friends? He's like, what are you talking about? So I don't have any answer to that question.
Yeah, it was a bit of a strange moment.
I'll just blame it on the internet.
Which is a good thing to do. Which is why when we do interviews where you actually get to hear the voice, people don't interpret via the word what was actually said. Sure. I know that you've always been a huge Kiss fan, and you've said that Kiss has changed your life and influenced you in your life. My question is looking back at the 70s, where you had Ted Nugent, you had Alice Cooper, you had Cheap Trick and Aerosmith. What was it about Kiss that stood out for you? Because Aerosmith is certainly great, Cheap Trick is certainly great. What was it about Kiss in particular that you went, oh, this is like extra great?
Well, I mean, because I guess I was, from the age of 11 through 14, basically, those years, 75 to 78, my world revolved around music and comics and horror, and Kiss was all of that wrapped up in one package. So that's why, they had all of that to offer. Whereas I loved Cheap Trick, but they weren't a comic book, and I loved Aerosmith, and I loved Ted Nugent, and I loved Led Zeppelin, but they weren't horror. Like Kiss was everything.
Right, and Alice Cooper was sort of in the same thing. No,
but Alice Cooper was before my time.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess so. Though Welcome to My Nightmare.
That was what? That was in 72, 73.
70. Well,
so I got into Alice Cooper later, but when I first started getting into stuff, Alice Cooper was like for the older kids, kind of.
Yeah, I guess that could make sense. The new guitarist in the band, John. How is he fitting in?
He's fitting in great.
Is he sort of a permanent member at this point, or is he still on a sort of a trial basis?
What does permanent member mean? If someone could define that, then I can answer that question.
Okay, but I guess moving
I
forward.
I don't really necessarily think anything is permanent. So I don't, to me, that question, it doesn't mean anything to me. John Donay is the lead guitar player of Anthrax. That's the answer to the question.
Period. End of story. Great. Scott, this has been great. Is there any? The DVD. I just quickly to ask you about the DVD that you're putting out. You ran it through Pledge Music. How was that experience for you?
It was great. It's everything I was hoping it would be, because it's taking out the middleman, which is the label, and I was able to go directly to the fans. And I think once the initial confusion of people thinking they were sending me money and I was like throwing out a big pile of cash that I keep in my basement or something, I think once people understood that it's basically just like pre-ordering something. If they send $10, they're going to get a DVD for the $10, just
right.
like if they went into a store to buy it. So I think once that initial confusion was cleared up, then it was awesome. And look, it's more work for me in the end, because I'm not using a label, and it's so much of this I had to do myself.
Right.
But at the same time, I embrace it. So I think it worked out great, and it's an awesome tool to have as an artist.
Would you ever consider doing an Anthrax album through a Pledge Music or a site similar, or does the band really need to be on a label?
Well, we don't need it necessarily, because our deal with Megaforce, at least in North America, it's our own label through Megaforce. So we're already doing it all on our own, and we're partners with them in it. So it's kind of like we already have the best scenario for us. We already have that set up at Megaforce.
Okay, so that's great. Scott, always a pleasure to talk to you, and certainly look forward to you coming back to Montreal at some point.
Awesome. Of course we'll be back. We always come back to Montreal.
Yeah, great city. And the Speaking Words tour and everything, and then the Chile DVD, fantastic stuff. Always looking forward to more from you guys. So great.
Awesome.
Thank you, Scott.
Great. Thanks, Mitch. All right, cheers.
Bye-bye. There you have it, folks. My conversation with Scott Ian, calling us directly from his car out in California. Looking forward to his autobiography. I'm also looking forward to the Cassius Morris show, I got to say. Honestly, Cassius.
Thank you.
Very much looking forward to that. And, of course, I'll remind folks once again, this episode of One-on-One brought to you by the A World with Heroes EP, which features the Killer Dwarves, Matt Bradshaw, Sudden Flames, Crash Kelly, and, of course, the one and only Dick Wagner doing his take of Every Time I Look at You, a song that he ghosted on back in 1992 on the Revenge album. So hopefully folks will go check that out. Money, of course, going to the palliative care home in Vaudreuil-Soulanges, Quebec, or in Hudson, Quebec. It's called the Vaudreuil-Soulanges home. Cassius, we need to do this more often.
I agree, and fantastic. And as you know, you have an open invitation to my show as well, whenever.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And I think what we really need to hear on your show is Ace Frehley. I would love to hear a 16-year-old kid who came in after the fact, but who became a big fan, get a shot at talking to Ace. So, interest you at all?
It interests me 100%. Any effort that could be made for Ace to be on the show, that would be a dream come true.
Yeah, I think it would be. I think as a fan of Ace and Kiss, I think it would be a unique perspective, because a lot of us who are, older, we have our perspective of what happened with Kiss and what happened with Ace, and we're sort of set in our ways. I think if you got a chance to interview him, it would be fresh and different and unique. And listen, I hope it happens. And let's try to make that happen.
All right, sounds great. And speaking on the perspective, I don't want to take too much time here, but I was born into the current lineup of Kiss pretty much. When I became a fan in 2008. And I'm still a huge Ace Frehley fan, and I like Tommy Thayer as well. So I think it would be an interesting perspective for somebody who was born into the current lineup but still loves Ace.
Yeah, because if you really became a Kiss fan with Tommy in the band, one would have to say, well, why would you want to go back to the why would you not become a Bruce Kulick fan instead? Why would you not be a Vinnie Vincent fan? Now, I know you love all three guys, and
Of course.
listen, I love the guys except for Vinny. Listen, he's completely overrated. But
That's another show.
That's every show I've done in the last 5 years. I think at some point I tell people that Vinny's overrated. But hey, listen, maybe someday I should interview him and he could change my mind, though.
That's right.
Highly unlikely. Cassius, always a pleasure. Thank you for doing this. And,
thank you.
Of course, thank you to Eddie Trunk. Thank you to Scott Ian. And folks, keep listening. And if you like it, tell your friends, tell your family. Head over to iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, TuneIn, Stitcher, and over to my YouTube page. Check it out, like it, leave a positive review, share it with your friends on Facebook and on Twitter, etc., etc. And for those listening, thank you, and thank you very much. It's Cassius. Good day.
Thank you.